Hello YouTube, it's Ryan here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another Bleach review. Today we're going to be looking at the first part of the Arrancar Saga, which is chapters 183 to 229 to or 230, around those parts. I read up to 230, but I think some people have defined it as 229, right before the beginning of that bit of stuff with Ukitake. So it is what it is, but yeah, I don't really need to tell you guys the book facts. You guys already know what Bleach is. I've already mentioned it a few times. So yeah, right off the bat, the rating for this is a 3 out of 5. I found it to be less enjoyable than the Soul Society, and hopefully you stay for the rest of the video to figure out why that is. But yeah, the premise of this part is post Soul Society. We're back on the moral slice of life side of things that were kind of very early Bleach, if that makes sense. The crew is chilling. The crew is trying to figure out where they're going now, what their life is going to be like now that they've had this adventure at Soul Society, now that they've had situations happen to them, like Guru losing his powers, and Orihime realizing that she's not strong enough, and, you know, this type of stuff. And as they're doing that, new creatures show up. One of these new creatures is the Visored, who are Shinigami with hollow powers, and the other ones are the Arrancars, which are hollows with Shinigami powers. And, well, it's kind of a big introduction arc to that, but it also doesn't really work for me as well as some of the other arcs. I've always thought that Bleach was good and enjoyable. I've already, always enjoyed it. I really like the character work in Bleach, but sometimes, or at least so far, I feel like the early parts of arcs, or the early development stages of arcs, are not as exciting as some stuff from other, manga or from other members of the big three, right? So, it is what it is. It's kind of a taste thing. It's pretty subjective. So if you disagree with me, that's cool. But it did feel a little bit lame, especially coming off the super cool, super high moments of Soul Society, to kind of slow down and basically restart, which is essentially what happens here. Doesn't really work for me that well. So let's move on to the plot line. And well, my general reaction after I read it was like, meh, maybe. I'm not sure it was that good. I'm not sure it was horrible, but it wasn't really like awesome. Usually you want to continue to build upwards, and of course sometimes that's hard, especially I think for Bleach's case, where you basically have this like awesome peak, and then you basically revert back to the beginning to build up that peak again. And I'm not sure that it's possible. It's not the same as like Naruto, which is a little bit more linear, where like each peak kind of like builds onto the next one. Or One Piece, where like it peaks and then the drop, or the moment where it resets to go somewhere else, doesn't really like it doesn't drop. It kind of just like stays flat, if that makes sense. I know this isn't really logically being explained that well, but in a graph, basically, if it's a graph, right? Bleach is going like this, right? And One Piece kind of goes like that, and then it goes, and then it goes, and then it keeps going. And Naruto is kind of like this. It does the same thing as Bleach, but it doesn't go right back to the beginning. It kind of just like stays midway up, if that makes sense. I don't know if that made any sense at all. I apologize. But hopefully you guys kind of understand what I'm trying to say. So the team gets back to Karakura Town. Uryu has lost his powers. He ends up meeting his dad, who tells him he can get his powers back, but only if he stops being friends with Soul Reapers, and only if he gives up on doing anything with them. Ichigo realized that he has a hidden darkness, and although he and the reader already knew this, it has now become a plot point that is relevant, instead of just like oh, that's kind of weird kind of situation like it was in Soul Society, right? Where we know Ichigo has this like evil version of himself, this like negative version, right? But we didn't really know what that meant or why it kind of had to do that, right? And so he's kind of trying to deal with this. A hollow shows up while they're in school. And now that Ichigo has his little hollow detector badge, that it lets him be a deputy Shinigami, he gets a huge alert and he runs out to go solve the issue. And this is the same day that Shinji Hirano shows up. And Shinji is a visored. He's one of the, I guess, meaningful members of the team. Although it seems like Hiyori is the main boss of the team. But I'm not actually sure if that's true or not. He shows up and he basically is there to recruit Ichigo. But it's more like a vetting process. They're kind of asking him to try out instead of asking him to join them immediately. Although Ichigo kind of misunderstands this, and so he's like, you know what? I don't give a shit about you guys. I don't want to be part of your weird group. I'm just a Shinigami and a normal person. I don't need to be, you know, some other extra thing. Then Uryu fights a Menos Grande with stored up power that he had at some point. I don't remember when he stored it. I don't remember if that it was even shown, but he stored spirit energy in these little capsules. And he threw the capsules at the Menos Grande and was able to knock it down, which honestly shows that Uryu and generally everyone grew a shit ton over the time that they were at Soul Society. If, you know, the Menos Grande was such a big deal when it first introduced, and now Uryu can take it down with like vestigial spirit force, right? But he actually doesn't manage to take it down. His dad has to show up and kill it for him because Uryu was about to die, right? So he shows up and he's like, "You loser, weak child, I hate you, but also, if you want your powers back, I can give them to you, but you have to do everything I say," kind of thing. You know, Uryu's dad is an asshole. Uryu was kind of an asshole to begin with, so it makes sense, but I quite like Uryu now. I think he's a fun character. And then, somehow, Kon ends up fighting the Grand Fisher, who has come back as a somewhat Arrancar. Like, he's not fully developed, but he's also not normal as a hollow. I think it's because he wasn't a powerful hollow to begin with. He was a middling level hollow, and the Arrancars that are successful and that work are all Gillian and above. So they're the top 3 levels of hollows. And Grand Fisher is not one of them. But we do get one of the coolest panels in this part of the story, which is definitely when Ichigo's dad shows up in full Shinigami regalia, explaining the situation. You know, Kon, I always knew that you weren't my son, and I've always been a Soul Reaper, but, circumstances, and Uruhara shows up to explain some stuff, and it basically lets us know that his dad was a Soul Reaper. He lost his powers for some reason. He moved to the human world, had a wife, had Ichigo and his daughters, and Ichigo and his sisters were his daughters, and then stopped being a Shinigami for some reason. And right now he has decided that it's time to be one again for a while, just so Ichigo has less on his plate. So that's cool. And it's a pretty interesting situation. It's a pretty cool reveal, but I don't know. It's pretty bog standard for modern shonen, right? So I liked it. I thought it was fun, but it's not that impressive. But the panels that were dealing with this part of the story were awesome. I really, really enjoyed them. The art style definitely increased a lot. Then Aizen is making Arrancar, and then they eventually show up. And we get to meet some of the meaningful ones. We get Ulquiorra and Yami, and I think these guys have names based on architects, because they're supposed to be architects of the new world or whatever. But I swear to God, man, couldn't Tite pick easier names to say? Because some of them are fine, right? Ulquiorra doesn't really seem that difficult. Yami is not that difficult. But then there's like random ass names that make no fucking sense, that I have no clue how to pronounce, and they're very difficult to deal with. So, it is what it is. But it's kind of annoying sometimes. They battle Orihime and Chad, and they actually pummel the shit out of Orihime, and they almost kill Chad. Ichigo shows up in the nick of time, as he usually does, and does his best to get rid of them, but, he also can't do that. So Uruhara and Yoruichi have to show up to help. And, they manage to push them back enough to live to fight another day. Eventually, the Soul Society sends a team down to Earth, or up to Earth, or across universes to Earth, I'm not sure. And this team consists of Renji, Ikaku, Toshiro, Rangiku, Yumichika and Rukia, which is fun. I really enjoy that Rukia comes back, and I really like how she comes back too. She's just like this little tiny person standing on the windowsill and it's like, Ichigo, come here. It's like, it's so stupid, but it works. And Renji and Ikaku are fun. And Rangiku, I'm kind of yes and no on. I really like her character design, but her interactions with characters sometimes don't work for me. But I will talk about that a little bit later. I don't really give a shit about Yumichika and Toshiro, but Toshiro's cool at least. So yeah, they show up. They get sent down to Earth. They battle with some other Arrancars. They meet Grimmjow, Xiaolong, Nakim, Deroy, Edred, Eelford, and they have this epic release, and they all manage to win their fights, more or less. We also get some development of Ikaku's character, because apparently he is actually captain level, but he chooses to hide his abilities in order to be able to be part of the division he's in, because he wants to fight alongside Kenpachi and no one else, which is really cool. I quite like him as a character. They manage to win, and Ichigo and crew go to train. Ichigo gets trained in holification by the Vizards, by Hiyori specifically, and then Chad goes to Urahara, and Uryu goes to his dad, and Orihime actually doesn't get to train because Urahara is like, you know what, you don't have the disposition for fighting, please step aside, we have other people that can heal this time, please take it easy. She doesn't like this, and Rukia is like, I'll go beat up Urahara for you. But Orihime is like, no, I get it, I'll find a different way to get stronger. She actually talks to one of the Vizards about it, and they help her kind of figure out something. And I think this finally starts to address the fact that Chad and Orihime don't have Soul Reaper powers, but they're also not Quincy's, and I think this is what Fullbrings are. I've heard the term before, but I don't know what it is, but I do think that that's what this is leading to. So it's interesting. I do think that Ichigo would also be one of these types of people as well. So I'm not sure. It doesn't really make too much sense to me yet, but I've heard the term Fullbring before, and it kind of seems like it makes sense here. So, yeah. Honestly, it's basically just a very condensed version of the beginning of Bleach and the second part of Bleach before they get into Soul Society. So, generally speaking, it's good. I enjoyed it, but it does not really lend itself to being really epic or really like immensely enjoyable, because it's all stuff that I've already seen before from this same series over many times. I mean, it really is just spinning its wheels in the same kind of plot points, even if the situations around the plot points are a little bit different, and it doesn't really work for me that well. So, it is what it is. In terms of characters, there's lots of people introduced, mostly Arrancars and, bad guys. But I don't like many of them. I like Okiura, and I like Grimmjow. I think they look really, really cool. But I don't give a shit about any of the other ones. And the same thing goes with the Vizards. I like Shinji, I like Hiyori, and that's it. I don't give a shit about any of the other ones, except the old fat guy, because he helps Orihime. I like him, he's pretty cool. The Vizards are pretty fun looking, like they're very interesting characters. Every character that Tite Kubo makes is interesting looking, and I like that a lot. But some of their character traits are not that interesting. And the Arrancars are pretty edgy, and the Vizards are cool. And the issue I have with Rangiku is that she has this beautiful, awesome character design, and she does come off as this calm, cool, collected, Hime beauty type character. And then she has the dumbest Orihime style comedy bits ever, and they just don't work for me because it is completely opposite to the character. With Rukia, it kind of works because, okay, honestly, Rukia, Rangiku, and Orihime, all three of them, have the same type of comedy bits every time. But Rukia works because she was introduced with this comedy bit as part of her regular thing. Orihime was introduced as a ditzy airhead, so it makes sense that sometimes she goes into that mode. But Rangiku, I'm pretty sure this is the first or second time that she ever had a comedy bit like that. And in this case, she had it a lot of times. But it doesn't fit anything else about her. She's a second in command. she's really tight with Toshiro, and Toshiro is a very serious character, and Rangiku is also serious normally. So when she kind of like just randomly out of nowhere has like Orihime style humor, it doesn't work for me at all. I don't really like it, at all. And the fact that it was so overused in this part of Bleach doesn't really work for me at all. I really did not enjoy that aspect of Rangiku's character. Everything else was great. It's just the comedy parts on her, like her style of comedy, being the same as Orihime's, being very similar to Rukia's as well, doesn't work because it doesn't fit the rest of her character, if that makes sense. Like, if she had, like, dark humor, or if she had something a little bit more, like, serious, but still funny, I would have liked it. But because it's so out of left field and so, like, opposite, it's like she's both the straight man and the Joker in the same kind of moment, and it doesn't work for me at all, so I don't like it. Now, in terms of world building, we get introduced to the Visors, the Arrancars. We get to see that Uryu and, generally speaking, Quincy's are able to regenerate their powers under very specific, honestly kind of ridiculous circumstances. We learned about holification. We learned that Arrancars also have Bankai, but their Bankai is actually more like holifying, whereas them getting Shinigami powers is more like humanizing them, if that makes sense. So they basically unleash their inner monster again in order to get their Bankai. We learned that Aizen plans to destroy Karakura Town in order to develop his new thing, his new world, or whatever he wants to do. And I think there was something else we learned. Well, of course, we learned that Ichigo's dad is a Soul Reaper. And I'm guessing he had to do with the experimentations that the Visors and that Uruhara had, but I'm not really sure. That's kind of interesting there. Art and fanservice wise, well, there's a huge step up in the artwork. I really enjoy it. Tite Kubo is a great artist. Fanservice, there's a bit here and there, specifically between Rangiku and Orihime. They're taking a bath together, and they have, meaningful, deep conversations, but they're all, like, with their titties out, so, if you like that, you like that. If you don't, you don't. I personally don't mind either way. But the fanservice elements of those scenes were good, even though they did kind of bother me because it distracted from the meaningful conversation that Rangiku and Orihime were trying to have about her feelings, right? So it is what it is. It's just kind of standard for manga, so it's kind of annoying, but also it's not worth complaining about because it's not going to change, right? So yeah, ratings wise, like I said, this is a 3 out of 5. It's just really not as fun. I also had a huge issue with the translation and the way things were structured and worded sometimes. Like, I understand that Tite Kubo wants to be very artistic and very poetic, but if it doesn't work in English, just don't try to copy it, because it makes it ugly and it makes it difficult to read. And sometimes it's just not enjoyable to read any of the translations. They're very outdated. They're not enjoyable to read. And they really just sound really stupid and pretentious. And also maybe like they're not translated correctly. They're not edited properly. So it's really, really annoying. I did not enjoy that aspect either. But my lack of enjoyment of this part of the story does not have to do necessarily with the translation, although that does add part to it. It's mostly just the fact that we're going over the same story beats, and I feel like it was already done better in Soul Society. If this was better than Soul Society, I would have liked it better, but it's not. It kind of just spins its wheels again, and I don't like that. So, yeah, definitely needs an updated translation or editing for it as well. Is there anything else that I dislike? The Rangiku comedy wasn't working for me. Everything else was good. The fights were good. The character introductions were good. Everything was fine, except for the translations and except for the fact that the plot points are recycled from the first part of the story. So, yeah, that's it for my Bleach review. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.